So those of you just joining us, uh, the information is here about an interview that I could not show, otherwise YouTube would ding us. So you can go to this address, and I'll paste this address in the information below before we put this up. And you can find it for yourself on YouTube, entitled, "I Don't Know If Trump Will Be Allowed to Be President." Interview with Eric Weinstein. He explains a thing going on in the background. So you can pause that and go there. So our focus this week was to be in a spirit different than this world. That's what we've been called to be. Okay? There's this guy called Machiavelli. How many of you have never heard of Machiavelli? Yeah, I didn't really know who he was either. Here's some information that's very clever. We'll put this, and okay, so I'll just give you this information. So he's a 16th century Italian Renaissance philosopher and writer. He's most well known for his writing on political strategy and morality as they pertain to the goal of acquiring power. Most of the Machiavellian big ideas were expressed through his book, The Prince. That is where he gives his most powerful advice for nice people who aren't able to achieve what they want in life. Machiavelli's advice hinges on a powerful yet uncomfortable observation about life. The evil and wicked people usually win. They're often the ones who walk away with the big prizes in terms of money and status. They achieve their goals far more often than nice people, often at the expense of them, aka the saying, nice guys finish last. He wrote, I think this is a chapter in his book, I didn't read the book, Strategies of the Wicked. The so-called wicked people are able to win far more often than the good people because they're willing to do more, always. A wicked person will do whatever it takes to win, no matter how dark, cunning, or immoral their actions may be. Most importantly, they will do things that a good person simply refuses to do because of ethics and morals. A wicked person will lie, cheat, steal, betray, destroy, as long as it furthers their cause. They'll use charming words too, and then he goes on, I'm not going to give you any more. You get the tenor of what he's saying. And this has fascinated me for a long time. I've been kind of a student for the last few years of the criminal mind. Why is that an actual thing? Are there people who will act this way? So, Michael Franzese, if you want to chase down some interesting YouTube videos, Michael Franzese was in the mafia. And Franzese got out. He was back in the 70s. His daddy was a big name in the mafia. He became a big name in the mafia. He was the highest earner in the mafia back in the 70s. Brought in like $100 million a week. He had a whole bunch of gas stations selling gas and keeping the tax money and not giving it to the government. Brought in millions. So there's two kinds of people in the mafia. There are the Neanderthals. There are the knuckle draggers. There are the people they're really bad people. They will beat up for, they'll do what they're told. They just go run errands and do what they're told. That kind of, they never bring money into the mafia. They just do the bidding of the people. The other kind of people are what they call earners. Michael Franzese was an earner. An earner is also a part of that life, but they're not in the same way. At any rate, Michael Franzese got out. Long story, I'll let you watch it. It almost never happens unless you rat out and go witness protection. That's the only way you can get out. Or you can retire if you get old enough. You can retire, but you can't get out. Francis did. It's a fascinating story. He became a Christian because he saw that in that life, the options were you get walked into a room by your best friend and they put a bullet in the back of your head. You get killed. Variety of ways it could happen. That's the worst of them. He saw what it did to every mafia family, every mafia member's family. It destroyed them. It always destroys them. He saw that you could die, you could have your family destroyed. If you love your family, you don't want that to happen. Or you go to jail. And back in the 70s, the government took a different approach to things. Instead of giving a criminal a year for something, they started giving them 10 years. If you murdered somebody, go to prison for life, 100 years. And the government would trump up charges if they wanted to get you in that system. So he saw there was no future, no possible future. And so he got out. His wife was a Christian. He got saved. Okay? So it's a fascinating story. Anyway, he has observed, and I think rightly so, that the government over the past decades has increasingly become more Machiavellian. There is no difference now between the government and the mafia, except we've all given express permission for them to be the mafia. You know, when you think about it, all the nations of the world, they're really just gangs, that have acquired power. So there is the perception of reality that may not be reality. There is perception and reality. So there's what's seen. We see an election. That's not telling us what's driving that force. We have Machiavellian forces, the Democrats, who are willing to crank up whatever they have to do to win. They'll do whatever they have to do. Have you ever seen Forbidden Planet? How many of you have seen Forbidden Planet? Oh, my word. Make a note. You need to go watch the Forbidden Planet. The Forbidden Planet, so we go to that planet. It's an old black and white. And there was a group of people on this planet that was so smart and so powerful. They built this energy force, and it was designed in such a way that whatever they were up against, it would crank up the power until it reached the power enough to destroy whatever force it was against. That's what we've got going on with the Democrats and the forces of evil in the world today. The evil is being cranked up, and they're going to win. I mean, that's what prophecy says. They're going to win. But even beyond what seems to be the driving forces, there are unseen forces beneath that. And I would suggest to you, the reason why these really smart physicists can't ever get to the real truth is because they don't know what the Bible says about the power that was really behind it. And you and I know who that is. It's Satan. He is that unseen hand. We're going to look at some scripture about that in just a moment. So the message in the stars, that's what we've been looking at. The Hebrew Mazzaroth that has now been perverted into the zodiac. We've been looking at that for a couple of weeks, and we're going to read Revelation 12 in just a moment. And we're doing this off Genesis 1:14. First time this occurs, and so that sets the stage all the way through the Bible for it. God says all of this stuff in the heavens has been set there, not only for seasons and days and years, we get that, 24-hour day, 365-day year, but more than that, he put those things up there as signs. The Mazzaroth, the Mazzaroth. So if you look through the earth to the sun, those stars that can be seen in that plane is the zodiac, or what was originally the Mazzaroth. And today, the people who follow this to guide their lives, they begin with Aquarius. But each thing stands on its own. There's no story to it. But if you're a Bible believer, you know the story begins with the virgin, right? And it ends with the virgin's baby, who becomes Leo, the lion of tribe of Judah. So that's, of all the stars that are out there, God placed all those stars, and that narrow band that is the zodiac or the Mazzaroth tells a story. If you follow it all the way around, it tells about redemption. And this shows up in the book of Revelation as well. So let's look at Revelation 12. And John actually uses the word there for wonder is signs. There's a sign that appears in heaven. John says, and there appeared a great sign or a wonder in heaven. A woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. All right, this already alerts us. When you go back to Joseph and the dream that he had, we know we're talking about the Jewish people. We know we're talking about the woman who gave birth. And so in verse 2, and she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. So we're talking about Mary. We're talking about, she's at the end of the genetic line where the Messiah is going to be born. Verse 3. And by the way, chapter 12, I believe, is a parenthetical chapter. That is, it's not a part of the storyline of Revelation. It is a backstory that you need to know about. It's a parenthesis, if you will. And so, being with child, she cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another sign or wonder in heaven. Behold, a great red dragon, with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his head. The power, underneath the powers that appear to be driving everything, is Satan. And his tail drew the 3rd part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. So this is the birth story, right? Herod was going to kill that baby, killed 20 of them trying to get that baby. In verse 5, and she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. So that baby was Jesus, who was to rule all the nations, and he has now been caught up to be with the Father. Right? So this is the big story picture of the Messiah, the Mazzaroth, the whole story of redemption. Verse 6, and the woman fled into the desert, into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God. Okay, now what I believe he's talking about here is the prophecies that said that the Jewish people would be hidden among the nations. That's where they've been for 2,000 years, until 1948. So she, she was in the wilderness where she hath a place prepared of God, and they should feed her there 1,260 days. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ, for the accuser of the brethren is cast down, which accuseth them before our God day and night. So, in the big picture, Christ was born, tried to be killed, caught up to heaven, and now salvation has come. Verse 11, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea. For the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. Now watch this, because it gets interestinger and interestinger. And when the dragon saw that he was cast into the unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. Okay, that's what's going on today. Satan is persecuting those who have followed that child. Verse 14. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time, from the face of the serpent. Now watch this. Okay. So I believe this is a big picture overview of what's going on, but I believe this is also going to take place during the tribulation. And we'll talk about this more if we have time, but prophecy is pattern. Okay, we'll talk in details as we get to that. So, but notice verse 15. And by the way, Jonathan Cahn puts this in his book. I'm fascinated by the things that Jonathan Cahn, I find out, is in his book that I've been teaching. Had I written a book, I'd be worth multi-millions of dollars. Actually, Jonathan Cahn has a great ability just to take what's right there in the scripture and say, did you notice this? Okay, verse 15, because now it applies to what just happened. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman. Now, let me ask you a question. Now, maybe I'm imagining too much, and I could be wrong about this. I'm not going to build a doctrine on it, but I just observe it, okay? If I get incensed and angry and out of my head in rage, what's the water that's going to come out of my mouth? Spit. I'm going to get spitting mad. I think that's what John's talking about with the devil. He is enraged at what else describes the growing anti-Semitism that's going on in the world. The spit is coming out of Satan's mouth. He's so enraged. Anyway, and the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. So since 1948, this spit's been coming out of his mouth. Even go back to Nazi Germany, this rage, and yet the earth has been keeping the enraged one from destroying Israel. In verse 17, the dragon was wroth with the woman. Don't you love the King James? I mean, anybody can say you're angry about something, but the King James says he was wroth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Okay, now that narrows it down even more. This is not just Jews. These are Jews who have found their Messiah. This is during the tribulation. Okay. So, we saw these constellations. And the largest of all the constellations is Virgo, the Virgin, larger on orders of magnitude than all the other 11. As I said last week, you have a constellation, but then you have 3 attending deacons, D-E-C-A-N. A deacon in this context is an accompanying constellation. So you've got the main constellation and you've got the supporting deacons. So that first one, in her right hand is a branch. We talked about that last week. Branch is a huge Old Testament prophetic symbol of the coming Messiah. He is the branch. In her left hand, sometimes pictured as an ear of corn or wheat, Jesus said in the Gospels, he gave an example of what he was going to be. He said, except an ear of corn gets planted, there won't be a resurrection. Okay, so these symbols are placed in the Mazzaroth way before any of these things begin to happen. Mary is going to give birth to that child, and the accompanying deacon has Mary playing with the child on her lap. And to me, it's fascinating that the child is pictured just slightly higher than the woman. And again, okay, I don't believe God ever intended for these things to actually picture a woman, etc. But this is what they mean. And he revealed that to Adam, and it's been passed down through the Jews to as the Mazzaroth. Okay. John describes the woman as a great sign that appeared in the heavens. The Virgo constellation is the greatest of the 12 zodiacal constellations in terms of mere size. It takes the sun 7 weeks to pass through the constellation Virgo. Okay, so as you look through the sun from the earth, that's what the Mazzaroth or the zodiac is, as it makes that circuit. And it takes 7 weeks to go through that one constellation of Virgo, longer than any other constellation in the heavens. The woman is clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet. On the ecliptic, this is where the sun passes through the Virgo constellation. Astronomically speaking, when the sun is in the sign of Virgo, she is said to be clothed with the sun. So in Revelation 12:13-16, we read, I believe that we have a prediction there that plays out as a pattern. But unfortunately, I'll have to talk to you next week about how that pattern plays out. And I'll share with you some of what Jonathan Cahn put in his book. And I recommend this last book. I've been reading it, and it is the best of the ones that he has written. The Prophecy of the Dragon. I recommend it highly. But I'll get to that next week because it's 8 o'clock.